All right, you pasta whores. Let's talk fettuccine. So, you already watched my video on how to make pasta dough. And now we're going to talk about cutting the pasta itself. Now, for this, I'm actually going to be using a machine to flatten out the pasta. And that is an Atlas 150 with attachment for the actual cutting. Doing this one-handed is much harder than I thought. There we go. For cutting the fettuccine right there. Now, I'm also going to be showing you how to do it by hand too. So if all you have is a rolling pin, you can do that too. But this makes it really easy to get really nice, flat, consistent thickness in the noodles. Now, there's a couple options if you decide to get a machine. There's a couple options you can go with. Like I said, this one's called an Atlas 150. This is actually the machine used in several of the top chefs, including Gordon Ramsay's personal kitchen. And that machine that my brother bought is only $78. So that's not a bad price. Now you can get cheaper ones. Imperia is another brand that is also straight from Italy. But if you look through the reviews on those machines, you'll find out that they use plastic parts. And while they'll last for a little while, they are not going to last the test of time. Whereas this machine is going to last and will keep cranking out work. And if you feel like being extra fancy, you can also get versions with an electric motor installed so that you don't have to sit there and hand crank it. Me, I like the extra work. It adds a little something something. And also $100 is a fucking lot to add for just a motor. All right, so let's hook this up here. Now you can already see I have my pasta dough flattened out. And on this machine, we're just going to run this through the machine here. As you can see, I'm just using, cheap shit flour because it doesn't, for this process, this doesn't matter what kind of flour I use. These machines, you never ever wash with soap and water. All right, it's all stainless steel. And you're running floured stuff through it. It's not, there's no wet food to worry about. It's all lubricated, to say, with flour. And of course, I'm putting flour on here, on my dough, not to incorporate into the flour, but so that it doesn't stick when I run it through the machine. And so I'm starting it on 0, which is the biggest size for that machine. What we're going to do is we're going to be running it through every size twice until I get down to the thickness that I want. Remember, also flouring your hands. Keep the hands nice and smooth so that the flour doesn't stick to it. And at this stage, you can see the flour, it's not sticking to itself. It's got this nice velvety texture to it. You can see it's got this deep, deep brown, this golden brown look. You can see it through the flour even. And that's from us using, first off, the egg yolks instead of just the egg whites. But also it has to do with the sprouted flour we're using instead of using just regular double-aught flour or using buckwheat or durum flour, which is, a bleached white flour. You'll see I'm kind of like pulling it out part way because we don't want it to just stack up in there too much. Of course, there we go. Now that was at 0. I'm going to run it through at 1, and then I'm going to show you what we can do to kind of take care of this ragged edge that happened from me force feeding it through, and to take care of the curved ends here. And this too, because this is such a hands-on thing. If I stick my fingers in here, the rollers aren't wide enough to catch my fingers. And depending on what you're making, this single portion of, this one large piece of pasta that I have is enough for a full family. If you were to do something like make ravioli, you would make this incredibly thin. You would end up with so much pasta, you would actually need someone to help you with it. So that's, again, a place where you could get the kids involved if you decide to make ravioli or very thin, maybe spaghetti or something. something that's very physical and very fun for the kids to play with. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to fold this pasta back in on itself. This is called laminating the pasta. Brush some of the excess flour on here, off of here. Pulls that through the bottom. There you go, that's a bit more square. And you're folding the edges because it's kind of catching on the edges there a little bit. All right, it's getting a little bit sticky. That's just the flour or the machine, my work area. Again, that flour is the lubricant. That's what allows you to handle your pasta without it sticking to you, anything else. Pull that out here. Look at that. All right, then we're going to move it back down a setting. This you're going to have going through here through multiple stages until you get that pasta to the nice thickness that you like. And this machine will roll that pasta all the way down until the pasta is a see-through translucent color, which you can use for making ravioli. That kind of thin goodness that you can just see all the ingredients peeping right through. I'm going to aerate the pasta a little bit here. Take it down another notch. Well, it's folding over a little bit. There we go. A few cranks there, pull it through. A few more cranks, pull it through. You can see it's still pretty thick pasta. If I take this and I put this in water now, if I cut this into strips and put this through water now, it's going to be really thick. It's going to be difficult to chew, and there we go. And it's going to take a really long time to cook, so I don't want that. Run this through the number 2 again. I'm probably going to take this down to a size 4. The sizing on here is a little bit like American wire gauge sizing. The lower the number, the bigger it is, or the thicker it is. The higher the number, the thinner. Look at that. Started with a piece that was maybe a foot long, and now we're going a little bit of extra length. if I were to turn this into something like ravioli, I would probably end up dealing with about 15 to 20 foot of the stuff. I gotta drop that down to number 3. Feed that through. Feed it through a little more. Or you don't want to be too rough with this, but this isn't so fragile that it'll break at the littlest bit of mishandling. So you can sit here and I can fold it on top of itself, it's not going to stick. And you see this is getting thin enough here that most of that flour is spread out very thin. So of course what we're going to do is it's a little bit of flour, and reflour the machine, because that flour works itself out of the machine as you roll it, right? All right. Take this back down here again. Take that down to a 4 now. All right, it's up to you how thick you want it. The thicker it is, the more robust, the more chewy it's going to be. But it's also going to take longer to cook. You have to be careful that it doesn't come out too tough. And then the thinner it is, the more delicate. And the more the other flavors of your dish will shine through. At the same time, that delicateness means that you got to be careful with the cooking. Make sure it doesn't overcook. Because like I said, this pasta is more forgiving than the stuff you buy at the store, but it does have its limits. So I can just fold that all on top of each other and it's still fine. Look at all that. All right, I'm gonna take this down. Let's see where we're at here. About 1 millimeter of thickness. I'm just gonna take it down one more notch. I'm gonna take it down to a size 5. It's not gonna be thin enough to be translucent, but it's gonna be pretty thin. I'll take that, pull it through. All right. You can, now you're seeing how every few cranks, having to take and rehandle it. I'd say every like 10 cranks or so. So you need to sit there and suss it out from the bottom. That way it doesn't get too compact on itself. Look at that. Look at that deep, rich, golden brown. It's like a thin spaghetti graham cracker, baby. Oh yeah, that's the thinnest we're getting for this. Now keep in mind, when you cook this, because this isn't, we didn't use as fine a powder, as fine a flour as 00 or anything like that, this will take longer to cook. Like if you want incredibly fragrant and fast cooking, then you would have wanted to go with, see, look at this, not even doing ravioli, and I gotta sit here and carefully transfer it back. And you can see I didn't quite flour enough, so it's starting to stick to itself a little bit. I'm gonna fix that. Again, just a light dusting of flour. Apply to the hands as well. You see how much that one ball of pasta gave us? Now giving us all this in terms of noodles. All right, this is gonna be enough for the whole family. This is gonna be probably enough for 2 meals, or at least a meal with a lot of leftovers. Which, all the better for you, especially if you can manage to get to the refrigerator before your kids. All right, let's take this, we're gonna move it back here to this side. Now I'm gonna show you real quick what you can do. If, let's say you don't get this, and you don't have, or you don't have the attachment. I'll walk here around the kitchen as tenderly as I can. Now what I'm gonna do before I feed the noodles through, I'm gonna use this middle piece here, which is gonna cut it into fettuccine noodles. This is clamped down here at the base to keep it from moving around while I handle it. That's about a good length. Good length for noodles right there, right? Now here's one option you have. Let's say you don't have this machine and you're not gonna use this machine. What you can do is you can take this and see how much room I have here on the screen. So back up a little bit here so you can see what I'm doing. Take that, we're just gonna pull this back here, give myself a little room. What we're gonna do is gonna take this and we're just gonna roll it. All right, and obviously, because we're doing this section right here by hand, this is gonna take longer to do than if we use a machine. But again, this is all about the process. It's all about having something, kind of fun that you can do with your kids. And then these noodles. Don't be like the general and forget to flour them enough, but those noodles just come right apart there. You should, theoretically, just be able to take this and fluff it up and these will all come apart. But like I said, I was a little lax on the flouring there. And so that's gonna be a little annoying to pull apart there. But you can do it that way. In fact, let's do this. Let's unroll this real quick. We're just gonna flour it. Again, this is where having a sharp knife comes really in handy. If you do not have sharp knives, I recommend you get that taken care of. And the reason is that especially for something like this, if I don't have a sharp enough knife, which I probably should have sharpened this a little bit, is that, there you go, that's just coming apart there. If you don't have a sharp enough knife, what it ends up doing is it ends up pinching the noodles together. All right, so there we go. Look at that. Hand cut fettuccine noodles, right? I've cut these really nice and wide. All right, so that's your one option, right? Or, for using the machine, you can cut the length that you want, and then simply move the hand crank up one notch. Use the machine. And look at that. And of course the fucking focus can't figure out where to go. Now, This is, again, these two tools were purchased by my brother, this drying rack and the Atlas machine. What you want to do for a drying rack is up to you. You can get them online for probably about 20 bucks for a nice wooden one. Don't be afraid with wood and pasta. Pasta does remarkably well with wood, especially unfinished wood. I'm gonna run another set through here. Oh, other side. There we go. They're nice and through. And look at that. Fresh, handmade pasta. Whoops. And this you can just sit here and let it dry. I mean, at this point, the only difference between this, well, aside from flavor, the only difference between this and the noodles you get from a box is just time, right? The fresher you cook them, the easier it is going to be to cook it. I don't mean like easy in terms of like actual skill required. It's just going to cook faster the fresher it is. At this stage right here, if I put this in boiling water, this will be done in maybe 5 minutes. Versus your average, spaghetti pasta, which is of course, a little thinner than this. Would take you, a minimum of 10 to 12 minutes. And there you have fresh hanging pasta. And then hand cut pasta. Two different methods for making the key ingredient for delicious fettuccine alfredo. Get on it.